This is EDUC 5103G, Innovative Online Learning Spaces. And this presentation is designed as a PBLO, i.e. PBL Scenario B, Cognitive Presence within Fully Online Learning Community Environments, FOLC environments. The analysis questions for this PBLO are as follows. What are the major differences between the community of inquiry and the fully online learning community model definitions for cognitive presence? Number 2, describe the relationship that exists between the FOLC model and the following frameworks: Desjardins' socio-constructivist framework, Popper's cosmology, Benz's constructivist-informed science and technology framework. So this is the cognitive presence that we're talking about on the right-hand side. Notice that it overlaps with social presence. It contains digital space, and it also provides a space for collaborative learning. So the four dimensions are organized as follows. The FOLC definitions differ from the community of inquiry in that the community of inquiry definition, according to Garrison, Anderson, and Archer 2000, CP is defined as the extent to which learners are able to construct and confirm meaning through sustained reflection and discourse in a critical community of inquiry, building on Dewey's model of practical inquiry and Kolb's experiential learning cycle. Whereas the FOLC talks about CP as being a thoughtful, reflective, and analytic process that directs the quality and quantity of critical thinking, collaborative problem solving, and construction of meaning that occurs during community member interactions. Notice it does not distinguish between which community interactions. It leans on concepts such as openness, learner-centeredness, democracy, and cyclic ways in which knowledge is created, evaluated, accepted, and promulgated. And that's found in Bleon, 2016. Learners are to be immersed in a deeply creative, self-generating, knowledge-constructing process. Again, Bleon, et al., 2016. The FOLC definition of CP also recognizes the increasing overlaps between SP and CP in today's online environments. As Armelini and DeStefani 2015 state, the social element permeates most layers of cognitive presence. Here's a theoretical underpinning of cognitive presence in the FOLC environment as laid out by François Desjardins, 2001. What's actually happening here is that the learner is defined by the pedagogical space that's illustrated by this triangle that's heading out from the head of the learner, and the pedagogical space of the more knowledgeable other or the learning assistant that is here. Pedagogical spaces are defined in the following way. So below the pedagogical space essentially are the things that the learner can do by themselves, so that they don't have to worry about it. The pedagogical space is also known as a ZPD, a zone of proximal development, within which learners can learn additional ideas through the assistance of a more knowledgeable other. So in other words, they can develop skills that are available to them with assistance from someone else. Again, no definition of that more knowledgeable other, except that they are more knowledgeable in a particular area. It doesn't need to be all areas. In fact, I don't know of anyone who is more knowledgeable in all areas compared to any other individual. The third space that you've got here is the space above the cone coming from the learner. And this is the space where the learner, in spite of assistance or even with the assistance of someone else, may not be able to actually learn the skill or gain the knowledge, create the knowledge yet. So it's a question of timing and perhaps development. A number of different factors can go into this, but this space is defined above this line. So really what we're talking about is the assistant should be pushing the learner to learn skills that are up to this boundary between where they can learn something with the assistance of someone else and the space where they cannot learn something with somebody else. And the assistant or the more knowledgeable other should also be able to recognize when the learner has gone outside of the ZPD or the pedagogical space and bring them back into the pedagogical space. So we are assigning a number of different kinds of roles specifically to the more knowledgeable other within the community within an FOLC. We've talked last week about Popper's cosmology, and here we have world one, the physical world, the world that we can actually explore using our senses. And then we derive meaning from our senses by putting together our own theories, which make up world two, or is explained or described in this particular framework as personal knowledge emerging from world one processes. And then we have those being explained or expressed or communicated to others in world three, where these are knowledge or language artifacts or recorded thought, computer memory, etc. So it's not the same as it's not the same as the knowledge that the individual has, but it's a subset of that explained to someone else. And then, of course, this becomes part of world one, if it's accessible in some way, shape, or form that can be seen or learned by doing, discovery, etc. So it becomes part of the physical world itself. So we're learning about a variety of things by looking at the physical world, figuring them out, putting theories to them, and then expressing that to others so that they can gain some of these ideas as well. There's also this whole idea of inductivist versus deductivist kinds of processes, and we can talk about those a little bit more as well. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to Larry Benz's Science and Technology Learning Cycles. You can find a paper, you'll have to ask for it, about the learning science and technology learning cycles. But basically the idea is that Larry worked on during his own PhD work is that expressing ideas is elicitation of the understanding that the student has, the initial understanding, preconceived notions, if you want to use that kind of terminology. The learning ideas is where they are interacting with someone else, so some more knowledgeable other, and coming across ideas that they did not know of prior to this. Judging ideas is where they're actually going to be thinking about these things and deciding whether the ideas that were presented to them during learning ideas was a better way of thinking about these things rather than the initial preconceived notions that they had during the expressing ideas, making a decision and then going on to new ideas, etc. So you end up with this cyclical kind of piece. So the blue or the purple, can't tell the difference, it looks more purple here, is about the content ideas, whereas procedural thinking, so the processes that are actually being used are going to be expressed in these maroon reddish kind of circles off to the side, and there can be different circles in the eliciting or the expressing ideas as compared to the learning ideas as compared to the judging ideas. And so we'll leave it at that. And then finally, the synthesis questions are as follows. Why is cognitive presence dimension of the FOLC set within the context of a community of learners when logic and the development of critical thinking skills seems to be individualistic in nature? Second question. Second one, number one. Why is Popper's cosmology juxtaposed to the socio-constructivist framework and models? How are they related and how are they different? And number three, do you think it matters how freely community members are able to carry out their investigations of their problems within a FOLC environment? Why or why not? And number four, why might the role of neuroplasticity or personal construct psychology, and this is a reference to George Kelly, in the development of cognitive presence in an FOLC environment? And I've been giving you a link through the library to get you started if you want to take a look at George Kelly's material, or you may want to look at one of my articles mentioning repertory grids, which is an operationalization of personal construct theory, and those can be found in my ResearchGate account. And that brings us to the end of this PBLO.